My name is Katie Paris, and I am the founder of Red Wine and Blue. I live here up on the east side of Cleveland in Shaker Heights. And this is an incredibly meaningful night for us. Those of us who share a sense of faith and being grounded in our faith in terms of where our values come from, and absolutely loving and respecting the ways in which we share that with others or where our differences may be, you are all welcome here tonight. The reason why we wanted to hold this event is that too often we hear faith weaponized in political debates. And for those of us who see our faith a little bit differently, it's so disheartening. And rather than just throwing up our hands, which is exactly what the other side wants us to do, we want to engage in a place that's based in our faith and values from a positive way that shows what a unifying force faith can actually be. I'll just share for me that I was influenced at a very young age in terms of how my faith informs my values. I grew up in the South. The model that my parents pointed to me for what it meant to live your faith were leaders like John Lewis, who was right local to where I was growing up in Atlanta, and those civil rights leaders who were also ordained pastors, truly living their faith. And as I became politically aware and I got older, it was certainly very much on the issue of reproductive rights, where I saw people claiming to speak for religion and faith were the ones outside abortion clinics yelling at women in the time where they needed nothing more than love and support. And so to me, there has always been a way in which we can come into the public sphere and claim our faith and have it be a unifying force that brings us all together, or we can weaponize it and use it to divide one another. And I know that everyone here on this call has made a choice to have it be that positive unifying force tonight. And I know that in the midst of this issue one battle, sometimes it can feel hard to engage with our faith when we are seeing it weaponized day to day. And so we hope that tonight can serve as a reminder to sort of reground all of us in that more positive influence that faith can play, even in our politics. And also maybe to leave everybody feeling more confident as you engage with the people that you know and love about this issue that we all care so much about, that you can come to it with a sense of connection for those who are also grounded in their faith, but maybe coming to a different view. With that, I am really excited to introduce Amy Fogel from the Red Wine and Blue team, who is going to be introducing our faith leaders who are joining us tonight. I'm so grateful to Amy for initiating this event. It means so much to me that Red Wine and Blue is hosting this. So Amy, why did you want to do this? And tell us who we have here.
Well, it's kind of like a full circle story for me because we definitely know that our red wine community, red wine and blue community is diverse. We come from lots of different faiths, lots of different backgrounds, and we go from one top of the state to the next. And so we really knew that we wanted to fulfill our team's mission of equipping our community with every single thing that they needed to feel confident and engaged for getting out the vote and enshrining reproductive rights in Ohio this year. And so we knew that this is something that we needed to do. But I have to say, personally, for me, I was born and raised in a Catholic household. It wasn't something that we were deeply rooted in. I had some personal events go on in my own life as a childhood where we really didn't practice any longer. And I really felt for most of my adult life that faith and religion were the antithesis to almost everything that I believed in. And so for me personally, working on this event, meeting with all the different faith leaders, doing the background work for this has been deeply eye-opening, extremely healing, and it has been such a wonderful moment to look at faith through a fresh and brand new lens. And I think it's the lens that we should be seeing all the time here. And so that's why we're here today, is we're here to reclaim faith and this narrative and take it back to craft the world that we want to live in. So I'm super excited for this conversation. Frankly, wish that would have like way more time for this. So I will stop talking about me. I'll start doing the introductions. I'm really excited about the group that we have here today. We have joining us this evening, the Reverend Tim Ahrens. You may recognize the Reverend. He was from the most recent Pro Issue 1 TV ad, but Tim is not new to using his voice for good. For 23 years, Tim has been the senior minister of the First Congregational Church in Columbus, sorry about that, a church known for its witness to social justice since its birth on an abolitionist congregation in 1852. Under his leadership, First Church has doubled in membership during an era when 7 downtown churches have closed their doors. So thank you so much for joining us. We also have Nicole Marino, who is the newly hired Ohio field organizer for Catholics for Choice. She has been tasked with building a base throughout the state to uplift the voices of the pro-choice Catholic silent majority. Additionally, we have Susan Reese, a volunteer with the National Council of Jewish Women in Cleveland. She is the state policy advocate for Ohio, a national position that she has held for over 12 years. And then we are also joined by Pastor Leslie Jones, trailblazer, founder, pastor, bridge builder, public theologian, social justice warrior. Pastor Leslie answered the call to ministry, armed with a vision and equipped for the mission. She founded Truth and Destiny Covenant Ministries in 2003 to be a place of hope, healing, and love for all people, regardless of who they are, where they are in life, and where they have been and are on their spiritual path. And then finally, we are joined by Reverend Terry Williams. Reverend Williams is an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ, currently serving as a pastor in a congregation in Chillicothe. He is a native of Southern Appalachian, Ohio. I am so thankful for all of you for joining us today, and we will just go around. And I think that our goal today is to make sure that, like we said, we equip our members with this question of faith and reproductive rights. What is the intersection of it, and how do we bridge those things together? And so I asked all of you to think about, how do you convey to folks that you come into contact with your congregation and out in the public of how these two areas of faith and reproductive rights, how do they coexist, and how do we help make those new connections for individuals to realize that these two things really do belong together? I'm going to let the Reverend Aarons go first. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's great to see two of my favorite colleagues in Pastor Leslie Jones and Reverend Terry Williams. And I just need to say, you have in this room 3 United Church of Christ pastors. So if anyone who's joining us tonight does not find a United Church of Christ congregation to attend and join, that's on you. Sorry about that. That's my evangelical beginning. So, but I just want to say that what I've found is there's a complete intersection between reproductive rights and the work that I do as a faith leader. One of the things I was sharing with someone the other day is all of us have birth stories. Somewhere in our life, something brought us into this world, right? A mom who brought us into life many years ago, someone who delivered us literally into this life. And all of us as well probably have, even if it's a one-off story, a story of loss related to reproduction. And so I have found, particularly since the ad has run, that there are a lot of people who are profoundly grounded in fighting for what they believe on this. And but I will say also that I have never been so vilified as a human being as I have over the last couple of weeks since this ad ran. We could take all night for me to read all of the names that I've been called. I didn't know there were this many names to call me. So I thought I'd heard them all in almost 40 years of ministry, but I heard some new ones. So, but I will also say that and Susan, I just want to really celebrate my Jewish brothers and sisters, and I mean that. My wife is Jewish, so that these are actually my people, right? So, and every one of the rabbis who has reached out to me has spoken deeply of their thankfulness for the stands being taken, and it makes perfect sense. And you'll explain this to everybody a little bit later, but it makes perfect sense in an understanding of life in Jewish faith for this to come together. We have been cut off theologically by right-wing people and by people who call themselves bishops in another particular part of the church who have defined the territory so narrowly that no one has a chance to even breathe. And so if you feel suffocated by all of that, you are being suffocated. Your life and the decisions you make is the most important thing. I just want to say that through all my years as a pastor, I have sat at the table with people who have struggled more than anything else around questions of their own choices related to birth and abortion, and they have lost. In front of me, I've seen more tears shed trying to sort these questions out. And all of them come to a decision that they need to make for their life and their future related to everything in their family. So that's a very honest statement. And I think there's a lot of dishonesty on the right. And I think there's a lot of confusion, quite frankly, in the No campaign about what their message is. Ours is very clear. Women deserve the right to choose and determine their future. That's it. That seems fair for all Ohioans, and particularly for all Ohio women.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you from all of us for standing up, being in that commercial, and being part of the front line when it comes to this. We truly appreciate it, and we're so sorry for all the names that you have been called. But I hope it will not be in vain.
Well, and you know what? Names. I learned long ago. Calling a name is more of a reflection on, if I'm the name caller, if I'm the one, it's more of a reflection on me, and it's a sad reflection. And I will also add, very briefly, Amy, it has made me even more than I've ever felt before want to reach out to every single one of these folks and just embrace them and say, tell me your story. How is it that you can hate so much, so quickly, and so deeply against somebody you've never met in your life? I mean, literally, you have gone from 0 to 60 in hate. That's scary. But it also means that there's something that I wish we could build a bridge there, because the hate will get them nowhere, and it's not going to hurt me.
Thank you so much for that. And maybe, these are the first bricks being laid to that bridge when it comes to this movement and doing these types of things. So thank you again so much. We really appreciate it. All right, I am going to turn it over to who is next here. Leslie Jones.
Awesome. Well, good evening to everyone. Really, really excited to be here with my colleagues and some new folks that I'm meeting tonight as we talk on this issue. And I will say this: I grew up in a very much more traditional, fundamental background. I kind of label myself as Baptist Metacostal. My parents were a collaboration of a Pentecostal mother and a Baptist father and Methodist grandparents who I lived with and came to age with. So I come from a perspective, I think, very different in this, in this arena, because when you grow up like that and then you begin to have some transformation, and I believe theology is ever evolving, that I evolved over time to the place that I am now to be, I think, and understand the work of justice the way that I do, in a very different kind of way. And so for me, when I think of this, particularly this issue of reproductive issues and faith, I don't really think of it that way. I think of it really as a justice issue. I think of it as an issue that we have, and we have a very, very big problem, I think, in our country. um, where um, matters of convenience and liberty are taken with government and policy and making laws. Um, I come from a people, I'm a descendant of people who have always had their bodies co opted, who have always been told um, what they could and could not do with their bodies, and unfortunately had a very oppressive and repressive use of the Bible that wanted to uplift that what those decisions that government was making about those people was justified. And so I approached this and I began to talk with my congregation and with my family and my friends until I had a name for it. I guess I've been doing relational organizing all my life because I've been talking all my life to people about why things are the way they are and it doesn't seem right. And so, in my conversation, I'm really, helping people to reflect on the fact that um, we need to look at why oftentimes, women, men, families are making the decisions and having to sit down and have the conversations about their reproductive choices and health um, and we need to also combat what I believe has been a very long story that has been told, particularly to the Black community. Oftentimes, you will see the numbers lifted up that in the Black community, abortions are 5 times more. We get the most abortions and in our community. And oftentimes, when I look at those type of statistics and I look at that type of rhetoric and propaganda, I'm looking behind it. I'm looking beyond it to what is it really, what's the real intent here? What's the real purpose of them actually sharing that? And what I see is an agenda, quite frankly, that oftentimes we're being told that Black communities and Black people have been marketed to, the abortion industry has marketed to those communities. Um, and I challenge that. I'm a Black woman. I'm also a Black woman who had an unintended pregnancy at 18 years old in a town. I'm away at college. I was devastated. I didn't know what to do. I happened to go into a clinic that said free pregnancy test. I knew nothing about right to life at that time in my life. I knew nothing about any, I just thought it was a free pregnancy test and I'm just going there to get that. But I was a person of faith even then, right? And I made choices even then. Um, and going into that clinic really opened my eyes and it changed me a great deal. Um, and I later learned that it was a right to life clinic. When I was shown some horrible videos, given some very, I think, bad counseling, because I didn't walk in and even say that I was even considering abortion or anything like that. I just said I need a pregnancy test. I want a pregnancy test. And so I think the tactics, the motives for me, and the way I talk about this is that we are to have compassion. We are to show compassion. And so I believe that that a part of this conversation is also about the methods and the real purpose, the real reasoning behind why abortion bans exist and why we even have to have these conversations, because I don't believe that these laws that you know uh, on the right that they're trying to pass, I don't believe that they are really about reproductive health. I believe that there is an underlying um, agenda. And I believe that agenda is about control. And I believe that agenda is about reducing the freedom of people And I simply, ask people, well, if God could give humanity a right to choose, who is the government to take away my right to choose? And as a Black woman of faith, who I name Jesus as Lord, I speak in tongues, I lay on hands, I dance in the spirit, I I love Jesus. I believe fundamentally that this conversation and these laws are a direct attack and setting us up for something that's even worse. And I believe that that is, if we can control the body, we control the mind, we control the people, and it will undo what we know as religious freedom. It will undo what we know as free will and the right to choose. It's not just that a woman can choose. I think the decision is between a pregnant individual and their family. If they choose to invite their pastor or priest or rabbi into the conversation, that is who it is. And I have no problem also stating that I will always counsel with compassion. It's not my choice to make for you, but it is, as a pastor, I am called to shepherd God's people. And in shepherding them, I believe that we should share with them um, from a perspective of God's desire and God's will for our lives. And God gave us that at the very beginning when He said, here's a tree, make a choice, and you can do. And then I am a God big enough to love you regardless of your choice.
Wow. I mean, absolutely incredible. Thank you so much. I mean, each part you went to, I'm like, yes, I'm going to mention that. Oh, I'm going to mention this. But I think the theme that I really got from your words is this idea of that it is the fabric of social justice. And it really resonated and reminded me of one of my favorite quotes as an activist and a volunteer and advocate. And it's the Reverend Desmond Tutu. And he talks about, at some point, we have to stop pulling people out of the river, and we need to go upstream and see why they're falling in to begin with. And it's like perfectly encompasses that whole reason of like, why are we having to do these things? What is going on upstream, and how do we create a better world for all of us so that we're not always in the river? So thank you so much. Wonderful words. It was just absolutely powerful. I truly appreciate it. All right, so we're going to move on next. Nicole Marino from Catholics for Choice. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you. And typically, our organization's name, Catholics for Choice, is enough of an icebreaker and a conversation starter for, I see everyone nodding, to ask me questions. I travel throughout Ohio with the amazing Reverend Terry for their Faith and Reproductive Freedom Tour, and we constantly hear the confusion in people's voices when I say who I work with, or people will just simply claim you can't be Catholic and pro-choice. And because of my own lived experience as a raised Catholic in Ohio, I used to say the same thing. I always joke, never did I think I would be on a statewide tour with a reverend talking about abortion access in churches. But Catholics for Choice has shown me and so many other people that reproductive freedom is a Catholic social justice value, caring that someone in your community has access to essential life-saving healthcare comes from Catholic social justice values. So we're essentially a team, and we're working to really dismantle religiously based obstructions, especially obstructions from the Catholic Church. And I see a lot of comments about that church institution. And we're working to dismantle those obstructions, specifically around abortion care and uplifting the voices of the silent majority. And we use the term silent majority because we know the reality is that 63% of Catholics actually believe that abortion should be legal. We do our best to share credible research, Catholic stories, experiences, as well as our own work, like the Advocate's Bible. This came out last year, It's 100+ pages of abortion education, Catholic history. I know some of the words that we used in the chat earlier have been healing. And again, as a raised Catholic in Ohio, this is truly the words that I would use for this book. And in there, Catholics for Choice uses 3 kind of main principles when educating about pro-choice Catholicism. First being your conscience, and everyone has one, and that is the final arbiter in any moral decision making. That second, religious freedom. We really try and respect this idea of separation of church and state, and there is most certainly space to question your faith within Catholic social teaching. And that final piece being social justice. And within that, the access to comprehensive reproductive healthcare is deeply rooted in Catholic social justice teaching, and that includes abortion. So we know Catholics like us are pro-choice because of our faith and not in spite of it. So through all this, with our research and sharing stories, we're here in Ohio really to prove that pro-choice Catholicism exists, and you as a pro-choice Catholic are not alone. We even know 1 in 4 abortion patients is a Catholic. So whether church hierarchical leaders like it or not, folks that are sitting in the mass, in the pews, those are folks that are having abortions. And even on that same note, 98% of Catholic women have used birth control at one point in their life. And that's another huge piece of issue 1 that we talk about. We also know only 8% of people actually agree with the bishops. And there's currently 17 million Catholics across the United States, and only 274 active US bishops. And something that Catholics for Choice likes to talk about is that there's no way a group of 274 men can represent 17 million different social and political values. So again, we use this term silent majority, and no, Catholics are pro-choice, but bringing Catholics for Choice missions and information and research here to Ohio, we're hoping to create a very loud majority. So again, I know that Catholicism part is very hard. We take a much deeper dive on Reverend Terry and I's tour, so you'll have to come and find us there, as well as check out the Advocates Bible. So Catholics for Choice is here in Ohio, but they have amazing, amazing research. And I see the chat really going there, so hopefully we'll have time for questions a little bit later. That's typically the Catholics for Choice, is where the questions roll in.
Yes, we will make sure that everybody is hooked up with your event. I know that you and Reverend Williams are going to be taking it virtual, so that everybody will be able to join you coming up soon. And I highly encourage, I snuggled up in bed one night and read the entire Catholics for Choice website, and it's wonderful. It's comprehensive. It is just filled with so much great information. And I thank you, Nicole, for getting out there, putting boots on the ground, and just doing amazing work. And so we'll come back to you in a few minutes, but I'm going to turn it over to the Reverend Terry Williams.
Good evening, friends. My name is the Reverend Terry Williams, he, him pronouns, and I'm a faith organizer with Faith Choice Ohio. The big question that is on our lips today is, how do we reconcile these things, right? How do we communicate the reconciliation of faith and reproductive health rights and justice? For me, I come to this work as a pastor. I have been a part of Faith Choice Ohio now for 4 years, but I've been a pastor in rural Southern Ohio for 11 years. And in 11 years, in that time, in that space, the stories that have come through my office, the people who have come to me as a pastoral leader for guidance, help, assistance, you have to be pretty desperate to come to the cisgender, white, queer pastor who's in town and say, you're the only person that I can come to for this because I need help. But for me, in this space, many of you know that I have been asked on a couple of occasions to be an expert witness for the ACLU around a couple of abortion ban related lawsuits. And they came to me last year and said, can you give us a guesstimate of how many people you've helped counsel about abortion? And of course, as pastors, we keep copious pastoral records, not of, individual information, but of stories. And I went back through my pastoral record book because I'm somewhat obsessive like that, and was able to certify that I have helped counsel more than 600 individuals in 10 years. Now that number's over 700. The reality is pastors all across the state are doing the same kind of work, and frankly, at similar levels, because people need access to abortion care. When people ask me, how do you reconcile faith and abortion care, or faith and the wider question of reproductive health rights and justice, I tell them, I can't take them apart. As an Appalachian, as a person who lives without access to a whole lot of stuff, socioeconomic privilege, the ability to get healthcare anywhere and anytime we need it, we cannot divorce our faith from the resources that we still lack and that we are struggling in justice to receive. I hear, my beloved pastor, Leslie Jones, I call her my pastor because Leslie, you preach to me. When I hear your voice, I think how united we are in our plights across many different perspectives in the state. We have Black women, women of color, folk in Appalachia, people in urban settings who have all not been served by the current system. And that is the story that we tell in Faith day after day after day. Faith is about talking about how the current systems, the principalities and the powers of the day are not serving the people, and they have not served us well. They have not served us well in this last year, to be certain. They are not serving us well in this moment. And we come to this moment because we are people of faith. I heard a sister in the chat ask, I believe that life begins at first breath. How do I convey that to other people? My message is always the same. I tell people abortion bans are against my religion because that is the truth. The reality is my religion is not the religion of those who are pressing these oppressive bans onto the bodies of people in this state, and it never will be. I have a religion that I should be free to practice. Every person who has a story around their abortion experience, around their experience of infertility, around their miscarriage, all of these elements that are part of that ballot initiative, every person who has that story has the right to own that story, the right to tell that story, the right to not tell that story, and they should all have the right to make the decisions that only the people who hold those stories hold as authoritative. As we come here, we could say so much more, but as we gather, I just want everyone in this space to know you and your story are the change that's coming into this moment. You are meeting in this moment the real shift that's happening in our culture. You are making that shift real because the silent majority is not going to be silent anymore. We are the majority in this state who believe that a person should have bodily autonomy, the access to abortion, the access to principles of reproductive justice that come to us from those deep experiences of Black women that have offered up this righteous and holy way to say we ought to be able to raise children in safe and sustainable communities, daggone it. This is the movement and the moment. And as I come here, I try to remind people, my why is because I can do no other, because justice is crying out from every person with every story, with every moment, each and every day. 20,000 people in the state of Ohio have an abortion every single year. Those 20,000 are going to need our help and our assistance, our care, our love and support every single day. No matter what happens in November, they're going to need it. They need it now. They need it in the future. That's why we're here. We're not here for just this moment, but we are here to meet this moment. Amen. Hallelujah. Thank you all.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm near tears. It was just so eloquently put. It spoke to me deeply. I was thinking when you were mentioning the woman asking the question about, like, when does life begin? And we'll have to drop in the chat. We had about 8 weeks ago a Faith and Repro Rights national event, which is phenomenal. So I encourage everyone to play that sometime this coming week. But the wonderful Reverend Ashcroft in it said that when she's asked about, like, well, when does life begin? Is it conception? Is it after 12 weeks? Is it the first breath? All these different things. She said, I look at them and I say, you're asking the wrong question because of the deep tapestry of the human experience. How do you boil it down to one moment? How do you pin the experience of humanity into one single question and one single answer? And so It was just phenomenal. Thank you so much. So I want to keep us moving on time. I'm going to turn it over now to Susan Reese from the National Council of Jewish Women. So thank you so much, Susan. I saved you for last because you and I chatted last week. I have learned this over the past months. Judaism has a different perspective when it comes to reproductive rights. And I don't think a whole lot of people know about that. And so why don't you go ahead and share with our group today?
Thank you very much. And before I go on, I just want to say, Pastor Leslie, that I really appreciate your vulnerability when you shared with everybody. Your stories are really so heartfelt, and we really that's so hard to share for some people. So I really appreciate you doing that to this group. I want to say Amy is absolutely right. I have a big sign in the front of my lawn that says reproductive rights are a Jewish value. And so that is different than, there's other religions that feel that way. But I think as a whole, Judaism believes that, and it comes from the Torah. The first part is that in the Torah is a story that if you cause someone to have an abortion, miscarriage, that it is as if the person lost a limb, not as if they lost a life. And so your reparation is whatever that would be for losing a limb. So that's number one. Number two, what was said before about you are not a human being until you have breathed your first breath. That is exactly what Judaism believes. Until the baby has breathed its first breath, that's when its soul comes into the body. And because of both of those things, the life and the health of the mother, who is a living, breathing human being, always takes precedent over the life of the fetus. So those are the three, that's where Judaism comes from when it comes to reproductive rights. So NCJW, as an organization, National Council of Jewish Women, we are base all of our work on our Jewish faith. And I think that the values that we state have already been stated by everyone else. And that is our common language, these are our values of health and well-being, of autonomy, freedom, and rights. And what everyone has already said about someone's health and well-being, that basically everything included in issue 1 about birth control, abortion, maternal care. And when families have these health services, they are healthier and their families thrive. We all have that as a value. Autonomy, the decision whether, when, or not to become a parent is one of the most important decisions in life that you can make, and every person should be able to make those decisions about their pregnancy free from any restrictions. As we've been saying throughout this campaign, it should not be up to politicians to determine our personal medical decisions. Freedom, lots of talk about freedom out in the community, freedom of speech, freedom that are granted to us through the Constitution, but we're really not free until everyone is free to make decisions about their own bodies, their own lives, and their futures. And we need to trust the decisions of pregnant people. Forcing someone to continue a pregnancy against their will, denying abortion care is a violation of their freedom and humanity. One of the NCJW members tells a story where she was ill. She went to her doctor, and her doctor gave her an antibiotic, which she took, and then afterwards found out that she was pregnant, and that antibiotic caused all numerous fetal anomalies because she was in her first trimester. And she was so grateful to be able to make the choice to decide whether or not to continue that pregnancy, which she chose not to because it would affect her 2 older children and that family for a long time. And we need to trust people to make their own decisions. And finally, the last value of rights. Living a safe and healthy life is a basic right, and everyone should have the right to control, care for their own bodies. As was said before, it's a decision between the pregnant person, their loved ones, and if they choose, their religious leader. So we all share these values, and it is great to be in community with people who all do have the same values. And I think that when you talk from a values-based conversation, that you can find commonality with the majority of people.
Thank you so much, Susan. I also wanted to highlight when you and I talked the other day, you mentioned, and I want to make sure that I say it correctly, black and white fire, and this concept in the Jewish religion of like there is what is on the paper and written, and then there's everything that isn't spoken and isn't there. And that just really was a beautiful way to, I'd never thought of anything like that. And I thought it was a really amazing concept. So thank you all so much for joining us. I am going to, we're getting close on time here, so I want to make sure that we leave space for talking about what are we going to do with all of this information? How are we going to get out there and make sure that we mobilize folks to vote yes on issue 1 so that we can start taking those incremental steps to the social justice that we all want to see happen in our communities. So I think I'm going to make the executive decision here. We're going to kind of have to skip over kind of the background on reproductive rights and faith from, back in the 60s and 70s. But we'll make sure you can do a deep dive with Nicole and Reverend Terry Williams in one of their upcoming virtual events. And we'll also make sure that you have information to see if they're coming to a town near you. Let's talk about what we can do with all of this information, and then we'll leave it up for a little bit of Q&A right here at the very end. What we're doing here at Red, Wine, and Blue for November 2023 is we're leaning into what Pastor Leslie says that she's been doing her whole life in relational organizing, but it's just a fancy way of talking to your friends and family. We have found that our organization helps break through partisan lines. We have over 30% of you identify as Republican or unaffiliated, and working a relational program and reaching out to your friends and family truly does make a difference. And I know that you all say that all of your friends and family vote, but the statistics simply show that that isn't true. And so if you take the time to reach out to them, make sure that they have a plan to vote, make sure they have all the correct information. And we here at Red, Wine, and Blue have literally taken care of all of it for you. We've packaged it all up, and it is on this website it's called Rally. So it increases voter turnout with the folks that you reach out to 8.5%. And then it even has a second order effect of making sure that you yourself get out there and vote as well. You can scan this QR code. It will take you to Rally. We also have a wonderful Train in 10 video. It will show you how to work through the entire platform. Load your contacts in. I promise none of us are reaching out to them. No one can see your contacts. This is a tool that we have designed for you to make it super simple to help get out the vote. We have loaded it full with graphics, stuff that you can copy and paste to text your friends and family. And Jen and I are also working in collaboration with Catholics for Choice to create some faith-based messaging for you to use to help talk to your friends and family about this. So we will drop extra information in the chat, and you can also text Ohio to 59868. I know that we have several questions. I think we talked a little bit about this with Reverend Aarons, but it says, I believe that life begins with the first breath, but I don't know how to convey that meaning to other people who feel that cells and unviable fetuses are quote unquote babies. Is there a thoughtful way to respond to them without getting into their judgment statements or social status or financial situations?
The way that I usually respond to this is to say, abortion bans are against my religion because it grounds the conversation now in your moral framework. And the other statement that I would make is, it's fine for you to have that belief because we all get to have our beliefs. The problem comes when you want your belief to govern my body, and that is a major problem because the Bible is not the Constitution, and we have to have a separation between what you believe and what my body gets to do. And that begins to ground the conversation instead of in somebody's moral framework of I must force my morality on you. It grounds it in a conversation of pluralism because at the end of the day, folks don't want other people's religion forced on them. When they get that conversation going, it begins to give them an idea of, oh, this is actually not something that's universally accepted.
I love this question, so I'm very interested to hear this question. Are there any Catholic churches in Ohio that embrace your organization or follow those values that you spoke of?
That's a great question. So Reverend Terry and I are currently again on our Faith and Rebirth Freedom tour. Typically, we've been going into UCC and UUC places and religious spaces. We have yet, and Reverend Terry, you can correct me, to find a space of a Catholic church that's willing to hold us for our presentation, all about pro-abortion work. And then again, breaking down that barrier where, again, a lot of U.S. Catholic bishops have kind of manipulated this concept in religious liberty and getting into Reverend Terry's point. And I'm sure many people have been affected and harmed by some of the latest Catholic diocese statements. We have yet to find, I'll go with you, but we have yet to find one that we're able to get more involved with.
This is from Rise. Why do we never hear about those who are against abortion speak out about supporting the mom and child and family after they are forced to birth a child?
One of the reasons is the simple fact that it would be, I think, a contradiction of their purpose or what they're trying to do, right? And their agenda. In that they cut the safety net every chance that they can get, SNAP benefits, all of that. And so we can't now highlight that there's a real issue and an underlying reason why, maybe some abortions are happening, because it will point back to that. So we cannot talk about what would directly impact our agenda or their agenda. So it's not my agenda, but I'm saying, that's kind of how they look at that. And so certainly they're not going to do that. And to bring that up and highlight that would certainly probably cause more people to question whether or not their agenda is really real, whether or not the rhetoric that they're producing is real. So I think that's one of the main reasons that you don't see and hear them lifting that up.
Thank you to the entire panel for showing up today for us. Thank you to all 80 of you who have hung out this evening and showed up for us. And I'm going to turn it over to Katie to wrap us up for the evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for staying on with us. There was clearly a hunger and a thirst for this, and I hope that everyone feels like they got nourished tonight. I know that I did. I do want to remind us that when we do, I'm actually always reminded of my mother-in-law, who's a child psychologist, who, when we hear people yelling these things and the name calling, let us remember that if you want to know how someone feels, look at how they're trying to make you feel. That always helps ground me. And I think the compassion that can be hard to find, but that every person who has spoken here tonight has asked us to dig deep and to find that compassion within ourselves. And to me, that is the consistent theme from every single speaker. And what just makes so clear after this hour makes me feel more grounded than ever in that faith-based view for reproductive freedom. I am not for reproductive rights despite my faith. I am for reproductive rights because of my faith. And I hope that you all can walk with maybe some wind in your sails as we communicate this stuff too. We know the next couple of weeks, we're going to hear those names, but you know what? Those people, you can just say no and have that little compassion in your heart and carry on. But remember that there are people out there who aren't yelling, who may have a little bit of ambivalence. And there are other people who may feel a little bit lost and left alone and without a church because of all of this going on right now. And they're having those wounds, and having us just be silent in the face of these conversations and just cede faith and values and religion to the other side, that can feel demoralizing. And that's the last thing we need right now. We need to be rallying around each other and supporting each other. So let's find it within ourselves to present the opportunity, to present these words that show that you may have a different view, and that may be grounded in your true faith. But I also have mine, and so many people also have their faith-based views. And if we do, in fact, want to have a community in which everyone can have that faith-based view, to be grounded in their faith, shouldn't every person have the freedom to be grounded in their faith, to be grounded in prayer, to be grounded in a place where they can consult with a spiritual leader and not just be forced to do what a politician tells them? So I know I feel stronger tonight in my faith and in my views on reproductive rights, and I hope you all feel the same way. I saw some people asking for further guidance in terms of answering some of these, disinformation type attacks. Red, Wine, and Blue has a whole page of them at restorerow.com. Reverend Terry shared a blog post from Catholics for Choice, giving some faith-based responses on these issues too. But we all have given this a lot of thought, and we have provided you with the tools you need to go out there and have these conversations with confidence, but also take care of you and be in community with those who are here tonight. Find us in our Facebook group, find us at other events like these. We get through this together, okay? This is not easy territory. And so I just want to end by once again thanking our speakers tonight and everyone on the team at Red, Wine, and Blue who brought us all together to share this important, special time together around something that too often I think people tiptoe around. So thanks for being brave, everyone, tonight. Hope you all have a wonderful night, and we'll see you next time.